Now, this raises even greater stakes for Russia, and for good reason. This is something that is very, very serious for the Russians to think about, because if they're denied the Black Sea ports that they have leased, and Ukraine steps in and does that, then they're going to have two neighbors on their south that are directly confronting Russian authority within that region. And with our Navy built up in the Persian Gulf, it would provide a certain amount of military backup to the Georgians and or the Ukrainians if they decide to do something further in the way of instigating Russia. So now it is leading me to believe that we may, and I mean by we, the current shitty administration in Washington, D.C., we may be in the middle of a concerted effort to instigate war with Russia in an effort to perhaps lead them to the use of limited nuclear weapons. That would justify our retaliation with nuclear weapons either on Russia or other rogue states, because once the genie is out of the bottle, there is then therefore no rationale for not using the nuclear option. Whereas some have commented before, and even myself, that if we were to attack Iran, the most decisive way to do so to the neocon agenda and for the destruction of their infrastructure would be by nuclear weapons. And if in fact we had that as our goal, we would be tempted to go in that direction, as horrific as that would be. But goading Russia, who has more of a stated intention to use nuclear weapons in certain instances, goading them to use them would let that genie out of the bottle, and then the U.S. would feel free, more free that is, to use nuclear weapons themselves, whether against Russia or against other supposed enemies. So, I think that perhaps my initial analysis was wrong, that the naval armada itself was a ruse to turn the attention away from the Georgia-Russia conflict, to allow the propaganda to set in and blame Russia for the event itself, when in fact it was Georgian-led and possibly and most probably instigated by United States military forces in Georgia. And that the naval armada is not being assembled for a blockade of Iran, but instead to back up possible Georgian and or Ukrainian actions against Russia in an effort to goad them into warfare and or the eventual use of nuclear weapons. This is a very terrible time. This is a very terrible time, and putting Russia in this position is only a real fucking nightmare for the United States, and we should not be involved in this whatsoever. But the neocons and the Brezhinski crowd apparently in Washington, D.C. are going along with this, because I see this developing slowly over a period of time, but the tensions are rising very much, and the pressure on Russia to do something is going to increase over the coming months. So, very likely that we're going to see some further actions, whether it's in Georgia, the Ukraine, or some other province of Russia, or even Russia itself, maybe towards Poland, maybe towards the Czech Republic. This is something to keep our eyes on. Perhaps we should be turning our attention away from Iran and the possible attack there, and instead focus on Russia, because that's where the action is taking place and that's where the future lies. That's my new take on the situation anyway. One final note on Obama, who just opened up a new website to refute certain allegations that came out in Jerome Corsi's new book. I believe it's Jerome Corsi, Obama Nation, refuting the various things that he brought up in there. I think that that's probably a mistake on his part to directly challenge, because in the past it has been the stated purpose of political figures to ignore people who disagree with them, rather than give them the time of day in order to try and say that what their refutations are wrong. It lends a certain credence to it, and in this case I believe Obama did wrong by doing this, because he lends them credence by even talking about them. I don't know who's advising him to do that, but I think that's an incorrect political stance to take. However, I should say this, that a lot of the allegations that are brought against Obama seem to have some basis in fact behind them. So he may feel pressured because there is evidence to back up some of what Corsi says, and he's afraid that that evidence will come out. Whether it's Larry Sinclair, whether it's about drug use, whether it's about alleged homosexuality, whether it's about some more damaging information about Michelle Obama, possible Muslim upbringing, etc., etc. I believe there is fire there, because where there is smoke, there is fire. So watch Russia, watch the Ukraine, watch Georgia. Maybe we should turn our attention temporarily away from Iran and see where this entire situation is going, because it does look as though there has been a shift in power in Washington, almost complete now, from the neocons to the Brezhinski crowd, which once again, as I've stated before, seems to indicate that an Obama presidency is a foregone conclusion. Thank you. Good night.